Where did the Protestant order of worship come from? That's a good question. Further, the first century church meeting was not patterned after the Jewish synagogue services, as some recent authors have suggested. Instead, it was totally unique to the culture. So where did the Protestant order of worship come from? It has the basic roots in medieval Catholic what? Mass. So there goes where the Protestants get their order of worship. It came from the Catholics. And from the Catholics came from Constantine. Let's move on. Durant points out that the Mass was deeply steeped in pagan magical thinking as well as Greek drama. Let's jump down here. Once established, the Mass changed little over 1,000 years, but the liturgical deadlock underwent its first revision when Martin Luther, back in 1483-1546, entered the scene. As various other Protestant denominations were born, they also helped to reshape the Catholic liturgy. So they take what they already had from the Catholic system and they just simply shaped it up a little bit here and there. Okay? So Luther also contributed to this whole mess by reforming the Catholic Mass. The high point of the Catholic Mass has always been the Eucharist, also known as communion or the Lord's Supper. You see that sun worship thing that the Pope has? They put that same piece of bread that it was not even a bread, wafer inside of that, and they worship that because it's sun worship. So here you have the so-called Lord's Supper, but if you look at the top, there's this cup, chalice, and then you see the sun. You see it's flaming up to the top? They're telling you what it's based on. A sun worship system. Alright? Because you can see the cup is shining like a sun and it's uplifted. Okay? The Swiss reformer Ulrich Zwingli, back in 1484-1531, made a few of his own reforms that helped shape today's order of worship. He replaced the altar table with something called communion table, from which the bread and the wine were administered. Alright? He also had the bread and cup carried to the people in their pews using wooden trays and cups. So when you come to Church of God, for example, worship, they put them on the plate and they carry it around and give everyone a little dip and so forth. That came from this guy. That was not the way it was done back in the day. Do you see that? So all these practices that it says you must do, and they beat you over the head. They don't even instruct you and tell you, give you a history, and then you can decide whether you want to do it or not. Alright, let's move on. Most Protestant churches still have such a table. 2 candles typically sit upon it, custom that came directly from the ceremonial court of the Roman emperors. Zwingli also recommended that the Lord's Supper be taken quarterly, 4 times a year. This was in opposition to taking it weekly, as other reformers advocated. So they started to go back and forth, taking it as often as they feel like doing it. Adventists does it every quarter. But you see where it came from. Alright, let's move on. John Calvin also put his own little piece in there too. Okay, with regards to the sermon and the collection of money that followed the sermons. Right, okay. Most notable was the collection of money that followed the sermon. Okay, so the order of service, the picking up of money, all those different things were part of this system. Martin Bucer is equally credited with fostering this attitude. At the beginning of every service, he had the 10 Commandments uttered to create a sense of veneration. Next slide. The Methodists also popularized the Sunday evening worship service, 7 o'clock. We're going to have service at such and such and such a time. Where it came from? Church of God 7 Day got it from the Methodists.
Because that's where the author of the people who started the church is where they came from.
Exactly. The Frontier Revivalist music spoke to the soul and sought to elicit an emotional response to salvation message. So not only they had a message to deal with salvation, but they got the music to give you that feeling to push you. That's why they play the organs. They play the music a certain way to make you feel sad and sorry. And the music is played long enough. Is there any other souls out there? That's what this altar's for. And they play that sodomite music. And they play this sodomite stuff. And you drop everything. And because of the music, the lights, everything that is happening, you want to give your soul to the Lord. And then the next week, you're the devil again. Moody's preaching. How many of y'all know about Moody?
Yeah.
Preaching was dominated by a single interest, individual salvation. Alright? He instituted the solo hymn that followed the pastor's sermon. We want the song of the day. The song of the day. Moody was the one who set the mood to get you. Okay? The invitation solo hymn was sung by a soloist until George Beverly Shea encouraged Billy Graham to employ a choir to sing songs like Just As I Am, as people came forward to receive Christ. In addition, Moody was the first to ask those who wanted to be saved to stand up from their seats and be led in a sinner's prayer. It also is worth noting that Moody was heavily influenced by the Plymouth Brethren teaching on the end times. This was the teaching that Christ may return at any second before the Great Tribulation. This preaching is also called pre-tribulation dispensation. Yeah, there you go. Which gave rise to the idea that Christians must act quickly, now, to save as many souls as possible before the world ends. So join my church and then become a member. You know what I mean? You ever go to the cash register to check out and they tell you, are you a member? Would you like to join? You can get such and such % off. I tell you what, you can get a % off all of this too now. This is only good for a few days. It's the same method of persuasion to get you to make a decision, but you have no clue what it's all about.
What they head into?
After they have got you in there, they forget about you.
They forget about you.
They don't care.
What? Who? She's sick? Oh, too bad. Yeah, next one. Pentecostal contribution. Beginning around 1906, the Pentecostal movement gave us a more emotional expression of congregational singing. This included the lifting of one's hands, dancing in the pews, clapping, speaking in tongues, and the use of tambourines. See, everybody contributed to this system, this foundation that was built. You see, let's jump down. Another interesting feature of the Pentecostal worship occurs during the psalm service. Sometimes the singing will be punctuated by an occasional utterance of tongues, an interpretation of tongues, or word of prophecy. That's why they'll tell you, him, I think got a word, that person, hallelujah. You see, all these things. Let's move on. But such utterance rarely lasts more than a minute or two. It's a very short prophecy. Such a pitched form of open participation cannot accurately be called body ministry. The Pentecostal tradition also gives us solo or choral music, often tagged as special music, that accompanies the offerings, the money. The way congregants describe these special services is fascinating. They typically say, quote, the Holy Spirit led our meeting this week. Pastor Cheshwell did not even get to preach. It was so powerful. So boy, did you feel that message was so powerful. And they make you see the light, they make sure that it's in there so you can feel it. All right, sound effects. But you can see by the pictures above, all these things are based on feelings. That's why when you teach the word, guess what happens? It distorts the feeling, it troubles the feeling, it interferes with your mood. Because the Bible is telling you, you can't do such and such. Let's move on. The Reformers accomplished a great deal in changing the theology of the Roman Catholicism. But in terms of actual practice, they made only minor adjustments that did little to bring worship back to the New Testament model. The result, God's people never broken free from the liturgical constraints they inherited from the Roman Catholic system, basically. So they made very small changes, but basically you're Roman Catholic in disguise. You can see, look at all these guys together. The popes, all variations. That's why they can get together. Because nobody has the truth. They're all, you see, the main one is always there, and everybody else is around them. And that's the main one. Let's move on. Everybody's in there. Let's move on. Next slide. The Christian sermon was borrowed from the pagan pool of Greek culture. They had sophists who were expert debaters. And these sophists used to travel around and they learned how to be able to speak very well, see, like an orator, to deceive the people. Let's move on. You have the Greek philosopher Aristotle teaching how to set up a speech. The Greeks was the one who came up with rhetoric and so forth in speech. That's why some of these guys can speak these wonderful messages, because they learned from the Greeks how to speak like that in the school of theology. All right. As this was happening, many pagan orators and philosophers were becoming what? Christians, because there was a money thing involved in that. All right, let's move on. So note that the concept of paid teaching specialists came from Greece, not Judaism. It was the custom of Jewish rabbis to take up a trade so as to not charge a fee for their teaching. The rabbis used to go and work, and then they teach the congregation. All right? Constantine also set up the thing with tax exempt. In AD 313, he exempted the Christian clergy from paying taxes, something that pagan priests had traditionally enjoyed. All right, so it's the whole system of tax exemption. That's why, ask yourself, how come the churches is tax exempt? Okay, from the same system. Let's move on. Leviticus 21 and 5, get that for me. Let's look at the practices of balding the head that you find these Catholic priests do. You see, you notice the head has this thing called a tonsure. It says, they even dressed and groomed differently from the common people, the priests, talking about. Bishops and priests shaved their heads. Let's see what the Torah says about that. Okay? When you get it, go ahead and read, Josh.
Leviticus 21, verses 5. They shall not make baldness upon their head.
Who should not make baldness upon their heads? Who?
Sons of Levi.
Sons of Levi, the priests. So if you consider yourself a priest, even the sons of Israel should not be making baldness upon their heads. So the Bible tells us. Baruch 6 and 31. Go ahead and read.
And the priests sit in their temples.
That's the priests of Babylon. Go ahead.
Having their clothes rent.
They have their clothes torn.
And their head and beards shaven.
They didn't have any beards. And they also had their heads shaven.
Nothing upon their heads.
They didn't cover their heads like how we have our heads covered. Because you see, they were told, if you read higher up in the first 3 verses, Jeremiah told Baruch to give Israel some instructions telling them, listen, when you go into captivity, you're going to see the way, the system that people have worship. Don't follow that. All right? So let's move on now. Next slide. Dressing up in the churches, all of that is borrowed from paganism. All of these things that you see, the way the clothing were established. Perhaps I'll have some time to come back over this, so we don't need to stay on here, but just to show you, the clothing system was set up from ancient Roman system. All right. From the 5th century onward, bishops wore purple. Book of Revelations talk about a woman that wears what colors? 2 colors. Scarlet and purple. The Catholic Church bishops and cardinals wear 2 colors.
Scarlet and purple.
Scarlet and purple. Let's move on. Men in Black, the original Men in Black, those priests.
Zephaniah chapter 1, verses 3 to 5. I will consume man and beast. I will consume the fowls of heaven and the fishes of the sea, and the stumbling blocks with the wicked. And I will cut off from off the land, saith the Lord. I will also stretch out my hand upon Judah and upon all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and I will cut off the remnant of Baal from this place, and the name of Temerims with the priests.
Look for that word,
Temerims with the priests. And them that worship the host of heaven upon the housetops.
All right, let me go back again to verses 4. God is angry and he's going to cut off certain people. I will also stretch out my hand upon Judah, upon all inhabitants of Jerusalem. I will cut off the remnant of Baal from this place. Now, we already covered Baal and the system of Baal, right? And the name of the Kemerim with the priests. Kemerim, when you look it up, it's dealing with priests who wore black. Because these are the colors that was worn by the priests of Baal. It's not an accident these guys chose black for their color to be worn. Chemarim, priests who wear black. Chemarim is plural for priests who wear black. Let's go to the next slide. Idolatrous priest, but the definition in Hebrew gives you
Okay, go. It says to be black or
to be what said? To be what? To be black. To be black. So priests who wore black. You see? In English you'll never know that. But when you read that in the Hebrew, you see it's priests that were black. Why do you think these guys do all the ceremonies like Baal? And they wear black. Alright. So the choir also was set up by the same system. Papal choirs began in the 5th century when Gregory the Great became pope near the end of the 6th century. He reorganized the Schola Cantorum, school of singing in Rome. This school was founded by Pope Sylvester, who died in AD 335. So here you got all this nonsense. Now, 1 Chronicles 6, 31 to 33, read that for me, please. Shows you that there was choirs, there was singing, but the singing was done the right way. Not this foolishness that we have today. So they borrow the inferences in the scriptures, or the reference of the scripture, and they do something totally different. So go ahead and read that when you get it.
1 Chronicles chapter 6, verse 31 to 33. And these are they whom David set over the service of song in the house of the Lord.
In the house of the Lord.
After that the ark had rest. And they ministered before the dwelling place of the tabernacle of the congregation with singing, until Solomon had built the house of the Lord in Jerusalem. And then they waited on their office according to their order. And these are they that waited with their children, of the sons of the Kohathites, Heman a singer, the son of Joel, the son of Shamuel.
Alright, so basically there was an order that was established, but not this stuff here. Let's go to the next slide. Learn the source of what you're drinking from. Alright? You're drinking from a stream, but you don't know whence it came from. Let's go to the next slide. This guy wrote these books. Sabine Baring Gould from 1834 to 1924. He wrote the book of ghosts, the book of werewolves. Does that sound Christian to you? Look how the guy is dressed. He looks like a priest, right? A pastor or somebody, a clergy, right? And he wrote all these other books, curiosities and myths and all kinds of stuff, right? Werewolves, dealing with the occult, witchcraft and all that stuff. Let's go to the next slide. This is an illustration of one of his books. In the book of ghosts that we looked at before, it says, Mommy, he says, Mommy, my violin costs 3 shillings and 6 pence. I can't make it play nowadays. Then the spirit of his mother, the dead mother, what? Passed a hand over the strings and smiled. Job looked into her eyes and they were as stars. So this boy is speaking to the dead. And the Bible forbids speaking to the dead. Demonic spirits. Let's move on. And you can see it's a graveyard. Ecclesiastes 9:5 says, "For the living know that they shall die, but the dead knows what? Not anything." All right? Verses 9, "When you are coming to the land which the Lord your God give you, you shall not do what? Learn to do after the abominations of those
nations."
Deuteronomy 18:9-11, "They shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, observer of times, or enchanter, or a witch." The guy was writing stories about witchcraft, werewolves, or whatever it is, right? Ghosts. "A charmer or a consulter with familiar spirits." The guy was talking to a familiar spirit, right? Whatever. "Or a wizard or a necromancer." And you can read 1 Samuel, not now, but you can read it on your time, with King Saul. So who wrote the song "Onward Christian Soldiers"? Onward Christian Soul. The same guy that wrote books on witchcraft. So when we get ourselves in singing these books, these song books, songs from these song books, hymnal books, we don't know the history of the people that write these songs, that now has become a heart-moving thing in the church. We don't know that these men are into witchcraft. We don't know that these men are sodomites and pedophiles, child molesters of all kinds, and involved in Satanism. But we sing the songs because we believe the words touch our hearts and bring us closer to Christ. That's what they teach us in a Christian church, per se, right? But we can see that the most famous song around the world, sung by all denominations that we know of, was written by a man who was involved in writing books that the Lord forbid. Witchcraft. Let's move on. Not only did the funeral procession emerge out of paganism, funeral procession, so did the funeral oration. So the whole prayer and service for the dead, funeral procession, came out from the Roman Empire. All right? It says that they would hire one of the town's eloquent professors to speak at the funeral of the loved one. The speaker followed a little handbook for such occasions. That's why they gave out the little pastor's handbook. And you read a little book like this, and you, "Oh, such and such was a wonderful person," and you speak such words, and "Oh, such and such," and then put them in the ground. All Roman system. We don't know that. All right?
"Weep for the dead, for he hath lost the life, and weep for the fool, for he wanteth understanding. Make little weeping for the dead, for he is at rest, but the life of the fool is worse than death."
There's two different deaths that is mentioned there. The dead is those that are living dead because they lack understanding. It's a contrast. It's just saying that you're a fool, you're dead. Okay? But then it also talk about those that are physically dead too. Those that are physically dead are in the ground. That's it. All right? You can't do nothing for them. They're cut off. So all the stuff that the guy was writing about is nothing at all. Let's move on to Baruch 2:17.
Baruch 2:17. "Open thine eyes, and behold, for the dead that are in the graves, whose souls are taken from their bodies, will give unto the Lord neither praise nor righteousness."
You'll give to the Lord neither what?
Praise nor righteousness.
Neither praise nor righteousness. So grandma's out there looking down on the dead. All right? Because it says, this person who used to speak these wonderful words says, he now lives among the gods, traversing in the heavens and looking down on life below. Do you see where it's come from? This is where we get this term, grandma is up there looking down, borrowed from Roman paganism. Read it again. "He would work himself up to the passionate pitch, and then say to the deceased, he now lives among the gods, traversing the heavens and looking down on life below." That was the guy who was hired to speak at the funerals by the Roman system. Now, another thing that needs to be mentioned, really, in the singing of songs. This is important. Remember I've said before that a lot of the way the songs and choruses are written, God doesn't get the praise in there. I feel good, good, good. I am the one feeling good. It's all about me, I, me. All the songs are written back and forth. It's not by accident. It even mentions that there to the top. Let me just show you that real quick. This is important, so you'll know when you listen to songs. Typically, the focus of the songs is on the individual spiritual experience. First, the first person singular pronouns, the words that are used in the songs is like I, me, my, dominate a good number of the songs. In some contemporary churches, the trend is moving more toward corporate first person plural lines. We, us, our. So the focus is never on God. It's always about you and I. God is never really getting the praise in those churches. So you can see what the singing, now you can see with the usher. Queen Elizabeth was the one who set up the usher system. Queen Elizabeth I, 1533-1603, reorganized the liturgy of the Church of England. Ushers were responsible for walking people to their seats and all that stuff, and you know the rest of the story, the whole usher system. Even the theology schools, it came from Alexandria, Egypt, because the Greeks had a school set up there for theology. So when a guy said, I'm going to go to the school of theology, they're going back to the old Greek system. Sunday school was a recent invention for the poor. All right, let's move on. We're closing up, so let's look at 2 Corinthians 11, 3-5. But I fear, lest by any means, as a serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ, or Mashiach. Okay? For if he had cometh, like Constantine, preaching another Jesus, like these up here, same guy, Caesar Borgia, your blue-eyed Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if you receive another spirit, which we have not received, or another gospel, which ye have not accepted, you might well bear with him. Let's move on. Proverbs 21 and 16. So here we have this picture of the Catholic Pope, right to the front, wearing the famous, you know, you see this in a certain store, Wally World, and they lead into the slaughterhouse.
Let's take a picture of this.
Slaughterhouse over here. You got the Methodists, you got the Church of God Seventh-day, Lutheran, the Baptist, Episcopal, all the different churches, African Methodist, Episcopal, all the churches following this shepherd to the slaughterhouse. All his sheep. Proverbs 21 and 16. Read.
The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding,
Next slide.
shall remain in the congregation of the dead.
The man that wandereth out of the way is the Torah, of understanding, shall remain where?
In the congregation of the dead.
What congregation are you in, brothers and sisters? That's the question.
The living.
We are in the congregation of the living. We have nothing to do with the whole church system.